everyone. I'm Jim MacLeod, and I'm here to talk about when your AI visuals are fine until they're not. So, this is a photo of me, according to Midjourney. So I uploaded my self-portrait there, my headshot, and I said, make me look cool. Obviously, this is far cooler than I will ever be, but I appreciated what it came up with. The challenge was, it had to go through a lot of different iterations. I'm not really sure how I feel that Midjourney and AI think that the only way to look cool is to have long flowing hair, but you know, I'll take it for what it is. So this is all fun when you're just playing around by yourself, but what happens when you need it in a professional sense? And so last year the movie Civil War came out, and their marketing team created a whole bunch of posters using AI, and this created some problems. So in here, this truck has 3 doors. It's a giant 2,000-pound swan being hunted by the military. And these 2 buildings in Chicago are actually right next to each other. So what happens is they started to lose the trust of the people because they were conveying a different message than what the movie was actually trying to convey. And this is where you start to run into problems, just similar to what we just heard about kind of losing that trust with AI. And so a lot of times people are being tasked with creating visuals, even though they haven't been trained how to do that. How many of you are actually creating visuals using AI right now? Right? And how many have actually been trained how to create visuals?
Self-trained?
Yes. Yeah, so that's where the breakdown is. And a lot of people, a lot of marketers, a lot of other folks are being tasked with creating visuals, but they didn't have the proper training. And so this is leading to a lot of frustration. And nobody taught them how, and now it's like, okay, do more with less, which is just kind of a general theme of every business these days. And it's creating these problems, and people are feeling stressed out. But what if people did have that basic training? You know, even the basics of how to create a prompt. So with ChatGPT's new image generation, you can actually feed an image in and then give it additional guidelines. So this is the same photo using different ways to position the camera, and you end up with a different emotion, a different feeling from these images that you didn't get from the first image. And so one of the things you want to do is start building that prompt library or vocabulary. Because what will happen is you can create a bunch of images, a series of images that all have a similar feel to them. And that's what you want. Like, it's just like working with a regular designer. When you ask something, you have an idea of what the output's going to be. You need to tell the AI what it is you're looking for. Fun picture of a dog. Not a lot of information given in this prompt, but now the problem is, if you were to add this dog to this particular page, and right next to it was a couple of those stressed out marketers, this image is going to grab all the attention because it's so bright, it's so vibrant. So the other thing to think about is, as you are creating your images, think about the context in which they live. Because wherever you are on this page, this dog is going to grab all of your attention. So AI is fast and it's cheap, but without direction, it's not going to know what to do. It's going to give you a bunch of surprises and create a lot of pretty noise. That dog photo was fun, but it's not right for this actual environment. So the thing to remember is AI is just a tool. It's not a solution. And the other thing is, everyone can tell when you're using AI. It's getting better. Midjourney's probably the furthest ahead with generating images through AI right now, but it's like a bad toupee. Looks good, right? Yeah. People know it. You know, you think you're being subtle, you think you're pulling it off, but the reality is everyone knows. Everyone's talking behind your back. And another fun fact, for the previous slide, I had to Google the word toupee to figure out where the apostrophe goes. Being a guy in his 40s who doesn't have a ton of hair, my Google search results are a little bit different now than they were before I Googled the word toupee. So I was the director of digital experience at Northeastern University. This is what the homepage looked like when I first joined. There's a ton going on. It's all fragmented. There's too many different agendas. You know, people saying my stuff is important. Does anybody else run into that? Just conflicting agendas? Yeah. It's a constant pain. So, and you can even see here, there's probably 30 links above the fold on this homepage right now. If you're a prospect, where do you even begin? So luckily we had a team of designers and content managers that were able to actually streamline the homepage and the whole core www site. And it made things much easier. You know, just simplify the message, simplify the design, and then we built out an enterprise design system, which there are some sessions on later on today that I'm looking forward to. And the great thing with that is once we started rolling out that enterprise design system, people knew that when they're going to these different sites, it was that they knew it was part of the core experience. Northeastern has a distributed marketing model, so there's all these different marketing teams and all their different agencies are all doing different projects, and everyone's special and everyone's pretty and they want to be unique, but the problem is it's creating a fractured experience for the visitors that are coming in to the news site, to the core site, to the campus site, to the college site, admission, student life, everything else. And they get confused. The visitors kind of get hung up on where they are, and so what we wanted to do is just start simple. It's like, what does a button look like? How can that button be the same all the way across the experience? What's an H1? How are images treated? These are things that we wanted to just kind of simplify and streamline because the genie's out of the bottle and the goal was to try to put it back in. Now, using AI also helps with localization. And so this is for the cover of an ebook, and instead of doing multiple photo shoots, we used AI to kind of generate new faces for the model in here. Here in the US, whenever you're sourcing stock photography, obviously you want a lot of diversity because you want people to see themselves and be represented within your product or solution. In other regions of the world, there isn't as much diversity. So you want people to be able to envision themselves in here, in your product, so that they can see themselves and then imagine what success they could have with your product. So AI is really good for simplifying this and just speeding up the whole process, because you want to be more relatable. So 3 design principles to know if you are somebody that's using Canva or using AI: visual hierarchy, contrast and clarity, and typography and simplicity. So regular website page, we can look at heat maps through Hotjar or Microsoft's new service, Clarify, I think, and you can start to see where people are interacting a lot in more places. You can see the face has a lot of heat on it because we are just biologically drawn to faces. And it starts from birth. We're looking for security in there. And then we get a little older, we start to use faces to determine who's a friend or a foe. We're just drawn to faces. It's a survival instinct. The other thing we see from here is it follows a Z-like pattern. So here in the West, this is how we read and consume. Think of a book. Start in the upper left, move to the upper right, down to the lower left, and down to the lower right. And we can see that's probably how people are scanning through these pages. Contrast. Believe it or not, the word contrast is actually the same hex color in both of those. It's a little drawn out by the lights. But the one on the left is much easier to read because there's a bigger contrast between the background and the foreground. And the one on the right, you know, sometimes it's cool to put text over images and you want some kind of unique visuals with that. But if you're forcing people to work harder, which you have to work harder to read that word contrast right there, it's going to slow them down, and people don't like friction. People are inherently lazy. So if you think of that, get the information to them as easily as possible, they're more likely to consume it. To tie it together, tying together hierarchy and clarity, I love this image because you read it in the order in which it says that you will read it. It doesn't, you know, we're taught to read top to bottom, right? But that's not actually how we consume these things. You know, we scan and then we consume. So if you think about it that way, you can actually guide the viewer's eye around your canvas, your page, whatever it is. Just make sure you're not going against their natural Z-like attention pattern that they want to follow. These next 2 examples don't necessarily have to do with AI, but it's more about simplicity and clarity. 1933, Harry Beck was commissioned to redesign the subway map for the London Underground. And before this, maps are all kind of swirly and squiggly, and you kind of see where all sorts of things are. If you're trying to get from point A to point B, and you want to know how many stops are in between that, this is much easier, right? You're just trying to figure out how to get on and how to get off. Doesn't matter if you're going around a lake or anything like that. So, and then we saw Massimo Vignelli copy this kind of style in the New York City subway map. And if anybody took the T here today, these maps look the same. At this point, when it comes to wayfinding, clarity beats accuracy. And then finally, fewer options equal better conversion rate. Long time ago, I was a designer at BJ's Wholesale Club. We'd send out these emails with just dozens and dozens of products on them. But one of the things we found was when we lessened the number of products on there, we actually converted more. Because what happens is, as somebody's scanning an email, they might see something they like, then scroll down, and then kind of forget about it because they viewed 35 additional items. So it was a good thing to actually minimize what was on there. And simplicity isn't about minimalism, it's about prioritization. If you eliminate kind of all the distractions and you only give people a few options, they're more likely to pick the thing that you want them to pick or take the action that you want them to take. This is a great quote, and I think it really kind of separates people who have been trained in design and people who haven't been trained in design, and AI is kind of in between those. Because the thing is, you want to simplify it, you want to take away as much as possible so that people can view it and consume it. This is about restraint. This is about taste, which we just heard about in the previous session. It's about human judgment. Humans know, okay, focus on these things. Because AI iterates on the past. One of the things that we've been talking about in one of my mastermind groups is, if AI was around in the days of horse and buggy, would it be able to invent the car, the automobile? And based on everything that existed up until that point, which is how AI works, it would not. Right? It took a human to actually take that next step. Because otherwise, AI is just a glorified guessing machine. And without direction, it's just guessing. And sometimes it'll think that a velour jacket and pink hair is the way that you want to look. All right, that is my time. I wrote a book about this for anybody that hasn't been trained in design, but you're expected to create graphics. I've got a discount code. Here's how you can follow me. And I've got a couple books for anybody that wants to ask a question. Questions on any of that? Yes.
I had a question. When you do the enhancement via AI and you put it up, do you have an obligation to put a little disclaimer generated by AI? I know that Adobe Stock Images is doing that. Mm-hmm. And we've had to be very, very careful because there's a lot of distortion in those images, even though it's come from Adobe. So what do you have to do with regard to when you do something like this and your obligation to disclaim that?
I don't think there is an actual obligation because it's, 3 years ago we were photoshopping things together, and nobody says modified in Photoshop. In my newsletter, whenever I'm doing things, I'll always put the prompt of what I put in there in order to generate this output, so that people know, okay, this is how to get that. But there should be an obligation. But if you think about it, it's not really all that different than Photoshop. Yes.
You mentioned Midjourney. Are there other tools that you're sort of keen on? I'm always curious what folks with some expertise on these topics use.
Yeah, Midjourney was what I used for the first year and a half or so. I've recently switched over to ChatGPT's new image generator because you can have conversations with it. You can iterate on it. Midjourney, every time you say, okay, make this little change, it starts from scratch, and it might give you something completely different than what it gave you the first time. Midjourney is further along, that it looks more photorealistic than where ChatGPT is, but the speed at which OpenAI is pushing these things, it's not going to take long for those images to be photo quality.
Thank you.
Question?
That was actually my question.
That's okay.
With AI kind of being the hype and the buzzword, are there times when you just say AI is the wrong choice, we need to step away and rethink it from the human side?
Yes, yeah, I was talking with a PR group recently, and especially in the press where it's all credibility, right? Like if you don't have that credibility, it doesn't matter. That's a place where using AI would be bad. In a newspaper article, for example, you lose all credibility if it's created by Midjourney. So I think that's an important thing. Human photography, like real imagery that's created through traditional means, is always going to provide more trust if you're not transparent about how you're using AI. All right, well, thank you for your time.